I'm really upset. I tried testing out a new software and it just was horrible, horrible, horrible software. I was trying to do a video. Welcome to the Jeff Show. I've done the Jeff Show in the past. I guess I don't want to compartmentalize too much stuff. So the Jeff Show is really a blanket for everything. The Evil Live streaming show was about the Misfits, and Pizza Punk is about pizza. It's about food, pizza, mostly pop culture, like as it relates to music and musicians and touring and yeah, all that stuff. So that's like the music side of things. And then the Jeff Show is everything else, right? Everything else can fall under the Jeff Show. Jeff Who Reads Wikipedia is about reading Wikipedia, interesting Wikipedia stuff. So this is my other outlet. This is another outlet that we'll roll with. We'll use this as our outlet. So today, after failing miserably, crashing and burning to talk about George Lucas and the Star Wars sequel trilogy, which we'll do again on another day. I can't redo that all over again. It feels phony to sort of retread the same thing. So today I'm going to talk about a topic. I recently had Eric Davidson on Pizza Punk. He's the guy from New Bomb Turks, great guy, front man for New Bomb Turks. And he inspired this video by making mention of, we were talking about Quentin Tarantino on a thread on Facebook. And man, it just like kind of blew me away when he brought up, he said something that was really apropos for Quentin Tarantino. I want to see him do something outside of his wheelhouse, or outside of his comfort zone, outside of his box. And he suggested a monster movie. And while I would love to see Quentin Tarantino do a monster movie, it led me to start thinking, what 5 movies would I like to see Quentin Tarantino remake? What would be 5 really interesting sort of things done through his prism, his way? Because Quentin Tarantino he's a cultural DJ. No, that's not the right way to. Oh no, I spoiled it. Damn it! I hope you didn't see that first one. It's Frankenstein. All right, we'll get there in a second. I guess Frankenstein's the first one we're going to talk about. But Quentin Tarantino he's a pop culture DJ with his films. He takes little bits of this and little bits of this and little bits of this, and he sort of throws it all into a blender, and he makes something that's, in a way, he does for film what Sublime did for music. I know there's, it's kind of cringy to like Sublime these days, but I've always been a big fan and admirer of Sublime. And what's shocking about Sublime is you realize just how many songs were technically not theirs, that they covered. But anytime Sublime covered a song, even though they didn't think up the song, they completely and utterly make it theirs. They change around lyrics. They change the arrangements. They go from this song into this song, back into this song. They do all sorts of stuff. They sample stuff. They really make it a tapestry of everything that they love and infuse it into that song to make it, to give it their signature, friggin' flavor. Utterly making anything that they touch sublime. And I like to think that Quentin Tarantino does the same thing with films. He did it with Reservoir Dogs, is the taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3, and what else is it? It's a couple other things. With the names, Mr. Orange, Mr. White, Mr. Blue. That's all from taking Pelham 1, 2, 3. Straight up rip that off. Same thing with Kill Bill, is basically Lady Snowblood. It's this revenge film from Japan. You can watch it on Criterion. And that's what he does, man. He takes something. Inglourious Bastards that's the name of a movie from the 70s. The story is relatively different, but he literally was like, I'm going to remake Inglourious Bastards and change the entire plot, but call it Inglourious Bastards, and sort of try and keep it something, carry on in the tradition of what it is. They did Grindhouse, he did Death Proof. Death Proof is a smattering of car films. And so I would like to see so instead of just getting these original films from Quentin Tarantino, which I love. I wish Quentin Tarantino would never stop making films. They're like he says he's going to stop after his next one, which is 10. A Quentin Tarantino film is a pop culture event, a milestone when a new Tarantino film comes out for all the cinemaphiles to pop out of the woodwork and talk about the new Tarantino film, you know. I mean, he was like first. I mean, it was real. It's currency. Back in the '90s, it was like he was like the currency of cool, you know. And it wasn't just him. There were other guys that were doing stuff that was similar. Kevin Smith, for example, is one of those guys who was doing something similar. Who has always cited that he was inspired by Quentin Tarantino to write pop culture into his scripts. Um, so it's like Quentin Tarantino was already kind of remaking films in his original work in that sort of way. In the same way that, you know, Sublime is just redoing songs in that kind of way. Um, and it's but this is different. This is different because when you here's the thing. If he's remaking a film, he needs to straight up follow a template that's already there. It's already he has to it's not about remaining faithful per se because you know I think the best remakes frankly are re-envisionings, you know, and frankly I think the best remakes are remakes of films that aren't that great. I think the problem with remakes and why remakes get such a bad um shot or a bad rap is because people are trying to remake good movies. Don't remake good films. Okay, don't do it. Don't remake a good movie. Remake a bad movie with a good idea. There's so many bad films that have really, really good concepts. They're just not executed properly for whatever reason. And it's not like to slight the filmmaker or the actor or the producer or the director or the editor or whoever of those bad movies, but it's like, whoa, that's a great idea. I'd love to see that idea in the hands of this person, you know. And so ultimately, when it comes to remakes, that should really be the golden rule. Remake something that's bad, but has a great idea and give it to a filmmaker to do so. However, that's not what we're doing today either. Okay. In complete contradiction of that, we're going to take, I want to imagine, or we're going to look at good films, incredible films, cult films, films with great reputations, and see what would Quentin Tarantino or imagine what Quentin Tarantino would do with them. And I'm not going to dive into every single one of them and you know try and think of exactly how he would do them. But I guess what I'm trying to say is these are 5 films that I would like to see Quentin Tarantino's take on these films. And the first one that I already accidentally revealed was Frankenstein. Holy crap. Could you imagine Quentin Tarantino's Frankenstein? What would that look like? Who would play Frankenstein, Frankenstein's monster? I would imagine Christopher Waltz, I think his name is. Who's that guy that's in Glory? He's in all the Quentin Tarantino films. I gotta look him up now. What was the last one? Hateful Eight. He was in Hateful Eight. He played the no, not he wasn't in Hateful Eight. Was he in Hateful Eight? I don't think he was actually. My lord. Am I out of it? No, he was in the one before Hateful Eight, which was Django. Django Unchained. His name is Christoph Waltz is who I was trying to say. Christoph Waltz. I would imagine Christoph, because Quentin Tarantino works with the same couple of actors. So we're going to try and let's stay in that. The same couple of actors have to be used, have to be cast in these roles because Quentin Tarantino likes to work with certain people. So Christoph Waltz would not play the monster, but would definitely, I could totally see him as Victor Frankenstein, right? So you got him as Victor Frankenstein. And then because okay. And then because of man, you know, I think I would do a reteaming. I know this sounds really crazy, but I think it would be Christoph Waltz and freaking Jamie Foxx again, reunited. Because I would imagine that Quentin Tarantino and his love of blaxploitation films and grindhouse and 70s sort of stuff, he would wanna riff on Frankenstein in a way where he was paying homage to maybe Blackenstein, which was a blaxploitation telling of Frankenstein in the 70s. So maybe his Frankenstein would be black, and I would like to think that it would be Samuel L. Jackson, but I think maybe he would go with someone like, I want to say, okay, so first off, it would probably be Samuel L. Jackson as Frankenstein himself. Could you imagine a Frankenstein's monster as Samuel L. Jackson? Oh, mother effer! It would be crazy. It would absolutely be crazy. Um, a black Frankenstein created by a white man. That would be okay. So there's like a lot. There would be a lot of red tape, a lot of interesting sort of layers to that too, I think. So basically, okay, wow, this is starting to really take shape in my mind. So basically, it's like sort of using Frankenstein or using Django Unchained as a template for Frankenstein. Whoa, that would be crazy. So maybe Christoph Waltz wouldn't play Victor Frankenstein. Maybe it would actually be Leonardo DiCaprio, and then you have Jamie Foxx as or Samuel L. Jackson as Frankenstein's monster. Interesting, and what that would look like. And of course, the Bride of Frankenstein would be a white woman, and you would get that same sort of. So it's like this. It's like this cultural. It's like this. Not cultural. What's the word? It's like a socio-political commentary on what used to happen to African American men in this country, where they would, there would always be, it was the same thing. Every riot that ever happened, including the Tulsa riot of 1921, Black Wall Street, where, just what happened is a white woman would accuse an African American gentleman of whatever, and there would be riots, and a lot of people would die. Black people would die. So maybe in this telling of Frankenstein, you would have a black Frankenstein and the Bride of Frankenstein, or Frankenstein's affection, Frankenstein's monster's affection would be, in fact, the white wife or something of Victor Frankenstein, to create this love triangle. I could totally see Quentin Tarantino doing something crazy with that, because he does, kind of, he goes to the edge with some of that stuff. And frankly, I find the message of Django to be rather terrible. The message, and I'm not going to talk about it here on YouTube. It's too much for YouTube, but I think the message is actually a very negative message. The way that Jamie Foxx's character is ultimately utilized in that movie is I don't know. It just the moment really comes down to when he has the opportunity to save a fellow slave, and he chooses not to. And for me, that wrote the entire character for the rest of the story. I was like, this person is not. This is terrible. This is a terrible movie. I don't know why. It was just like, if you're going to make a movie about these very heavy topics, you can't do that. You can't just, yeah, it's very frustrating. Quentin Tarantino, as much as I love Quentin Tarantino, he also frustrates me greatly frustrates me with some of the things that he does. So that's Frankenstein. That's number one. They're in no particular order, but I'm just putting that as number one. Our next movie we're going to look at, boom, Mad Max. Oh, mama. Could you imagine a Mad Max film done by Quentin Tarantino? It would be great. It would be great, man. I am all about this, man. Who would play Mad Max? It would, okay, first of all, Quentin Tarantino's Mad Max would be, first of all, Quentin Tarantino would be the perfect fusion of a Western and a 70s car chase film. So everything that he was doing in Death Proof, and some of the stuff he's doing in Hateful Eight and Django. And of course, it would also have elements of Kill Bill because of the revenge aspect. So you get all this stuff. You get Quentin Tarantino can do all of this stuff really, really well. And I just think he would crush it. He would crush a Mad Max film. You would get, so it's like the man with no name wandering in the wasteland. And Max would be older. He would not be cast younger like they went with what's his name? Freaking Tom Hardy. It wouldn't be Tom Hardy. It'd be some older guy. Let's put a pin on that for a second as I try to think of who that old guy would be, to talk about some other aspects. It would be I guess it would be a rehashing. So he's not, so we would go back to the first Mad Max. It wouldn't be full on post-apocalypse yet. It would be, we're getting there. We're at the cusp. It's right before the Great War that destroys civilization. And Max is on the force, because the original story of Mad Max is not Max's freaking the civilization still exists in the first Mad Max film, you know. He's part of a special force of policemen that are the last. They're like the last, and you know what's funny? They didn't get to shoot so much. There's like 15% of the movie that was not shot, the original Mad Max. So there's like a lot of scenes missing in the original Mad Max, despite how much everybody loves Mad Max. It's missing some important stuff. And so you see Max is like the last line of defense against these marauding gangs that are starting to form, these Viking-like gangs that are raping and pillaging and just doing all this crazy stuff to any town that they come across. They're just swallowing things up. The dregs of society, the outlaws, they form these biker gangs, these vicious biker gangs, and the government puts together this team of policemen, hardened policemen that you know they live in leather. They're leathered warriors that are out on the front lines committing acts. I mean, you'd have to have this Mad Max would have the original Mad Max was sort of violent or implied a lot of violence, but this one would be extra ultra violent. And it would have I would like to think that it has the violence of a Paul Verhoeven film like RoboCop. It would have RoboCop violence in this Mad Max directed by Quentin Tarantino. And Max's family would be aged up a little bit. Max would have he wouldn't have a baby son. He would have a 15-year-old boy, right? Like he's an older guy who's still on the force, he's two, and in the original story, Max is 25, right? He's got a brand new like toddler, 1 year old, and he's got his wife, Jessie. And Max is one incident away from becoming what he calls a terminal psychotic, right? So in this version, Quentin Tarantino's version, Max's hairline triggered, like his brass badge, they call it the bronze, his bronze badge is the only thing that's really separating him from being as cruel and sadistic to these marauding gangs as the marauding gangs are to civilians. Um, and it just follows the same classic beats, and it follows the same beats of revenge, just done Quentin Tarantino style. And I'm sure that Quentin Tarantino would do something to subvert the original story, because Quentin Tarantino sometimes he can do that. Sometimes he subverts expectations a little bit and does something that you're not expecting. A great example would be, once again, Django Unchained, where they kill the villain. Like the movie has another 45-50 minutes and they kill the main villain. And that's what probably that's another big problem besides the problems of Jamie Foxx's character. You have this villain. So it's like when Quentin Tarantino doesn't have a template to follow, he just sort of he can do whatever he wants. You know, he's doesn't have any. He's surrounded by yes men. There's no one that's going to tell Quentin Tarantino no. So if Quentin Tarantino wants to kill his main baddie, you know, 50 minutes movie left, he's going to do it. But with a remake that has to kind of follow the beats of the original film, perhaps Quentin Tarantino will instead focus on a more traditional structure while throwing us the occasional monkey wrench, you know, that subverts all the expectations of what we're expecting to be seen. So you get the toe cutter. The toe cutter would have these long, waxing philosophical conversations. Who would play the toe cutter and who would play Max? We got to cast these two roles before we move on. I'm trying to think. For toe cutter, geez, who's someone who's just like a silver-tongued devil that just constantly, if it comes back to me, it comes back to me. For Max, who's going to play Max? He's got to be old, probably like 45 years old. You know what would be interesting? I know it sounds this is really okay. This is crazy casting. This is crazy casting. He's a goofball. He is never does any roles like this. David Arquette. David Arquette, what, he's like almost 50 years old. David Arquette is Mad Max, playing it dead serious. He's like in that wrestling shape. He's got that silver streak in his hair. So he's that perfect, like hard lined, like hardwired cop who has seen too much and is 1 minute away from snapping. He's someone I would cast in that role. Who's calling me? That's a weird phone call. I'll get back to them in a second. Who else would I cast as Mad Max? I'm trying to think of this. Anybody want to leave comments below? Please do. Please. For the toe cutter, silver-tongued devil, who is a villain that was just so delicious as a villain? Maybe Alec Baldwin. Oh, okay, Alec Baldwin would be a good toe cutter. You know, like just just venom in his voice as he just like cuts through you with a devilish stare. He would be really great as the toe cutter. Um, oh my god, this is it's terrible because I can't think of anybody, and I don't want to like just be like, Who else could play Max? Who else could play Max? We had Mel Gibson, we had Tom Hardy. Who is like somewhere on that level. A long time ago I would have said Russell Crowe, but that's too traditional. We want to go outside of the Australian box. We want someone who's up there in age, but John Hamm. Oh, John Hamm would be a great Mad Max. Would he work with Tarantino? I don't know. I like John Hamm a lot. That would be an interesting. And then, all right, to flip it, toe cutter, Richard Brake. Richard Brake or Richard Breaker? Who's the guy in all those? Let's see here. Who's the guy in Rob Zombie's 31? 21. I meant to say 31. Let's see. 31 film. Richard Brake, I think his name is. Let's see if we could find him. Richard Brake. Yeah, this dude. All right, this guy is the dude. This guy would play the toe cutter. Okay. So you have this guy versus any of those other dudes I said before. He's a great character actor. He's sort of in a bunch of stuff. He's skinnier than the toe cutter. He's got that. He could go real psycho. He could be a real psycho. He would be perfect for toe cutter. Frankly, you could put Bill Moseley in his gang too, man. That would be real. That would be something else. I would dig that. I would dig that. Richard Brake. All right, so we're gonna go Richard Brake. What? Of course, freaking Nicolas Cage. Oh, Nicolas Cage is Mad Max, dude. Yes, 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 yes. Okay, this works. Imagine a Nicolas Cage that looks like that right there playing Mad Max. He's got a 15-year-old son, 16-year-old son. He's seen a lot of crazy stuff. Maybe he has the beard, maybe he doesn't. He goes up against Richard Brake. He's one step away from being terminal psychotic. Look at that. There's your Mad Max right there. I love it. I love it. Okay. All right. I feel satisfied now. It was really bothering me that wasn't working. Okay, next film, Scream, baby. Scream. Going back to the Miramax family. I would love to see Quentin Tarantino's Scream. That would be fascinating to me. Now, here's the thing. Scream is unremakeable. You can't remake Scream. You can remake Mad Max. The first Mad Max is an imperfect film, no matter how much I love it. And I love Mad Max. Mad Max is the reason why I wear a leather jacket. It's not the Ramones. I wear my leather. My leather heritage comes from Mad Max. Okay. But I would love to see that movie remade. It needs more. And I'm not talking about sequels. I just want to see the original redone. And all the stuff we mentioned would work. Okay, for Scream. For Scream, I guess we would take it out of the high school set. Would go to, but they've already done college. See, this is interesting. How do you do a Scream? I guess it would have to be high school. The mask would have to be different. It couldn't be the classic Ghostface. As much as I love Ghostface, you have to change up the mask, and maybe you'd have to change up the killing implement. It wouldn't be a hunter knife. It would have to be something else that hasn't been done, or maybe it's a sword. What? Yeah. Okay, so playing on the Kill Bill theme, it's a Japanese katana sword that Ghostface uses. And Ghostface, even though it didn't work when they tried to they have that was the Scream from the television show. This didn't work for me. I really hated that mask. Part of what makes Scream is the iconic Ghostface mask. However, because we're going with the Quentin Tarantino route, and Quentin Tarantino is all about like Easter eggs and pop culture and stuff. How about this? Casper the Ghost mask, right? Look at that. So in my version of Quentin Tarantino's Scream, he wears a Casper the Ghost mask. Ooh, I think that would work really well. And then he uses a katana to slice and dice his teenagers. Now, here's the thing. How do you recast Scream? You can't. Nev Campbell is Sidney Prescott for all time. My forever love, my one and only. Outside of my wife, I love you, honey. You're my forever love. But how do you go beyond how do you go beyond like freaking Nev Campbell in a role like Scream? So I'm going with somebody new who is actually in the new Scream movie. Jenna Ortega. This girl caught my eye. She would be the new Sidney Prescott. And I don't know what she's going to be in the new Scream, but she has that same girl next door. She has that girl next door vibe. Same, very similar to Nev Campbell, where she is like, you know, I don't know, she's just like the perfect girl next door, like energy, aura that for the final girl, for the heroine that would do it. And you know, I want to say here's how I would flip it. How would Quentin Tarantino flip the giallo? First of all, it would definitely be a giallo film. It would be amped up giallo, right? It wouldn't just be. Sorry, I have to trim my nose hairs right above my mustache hair. It makes my nose itch. Okay, so it wouldn't be straight up like the original Scream. It would obviously have to be like some sort of giallo-esque. Because here's the thing: the '90s slasher, the key to the '90s slasher is, in fact, it has to be a whodunit. It's one part Scooby-Doo, it's one part giallo, and it's one part '80s slasher. That's what makes the '90s, and it has to star, you know, up and coming hot teen actors like Jenny Ortega. She's like the hottest thing right now since she was in You. She's in the Babysitter sequel. She's great. She's a badass heroine in the Babysitter sequel. She's so good. She's so good. That's when I saw her. I was like, oh my God, this girl is like the next thing. And she's in the new Scream movie. And I hope she doesn't get killed. I hope she makes it to the end because I think she's great. She should be in the rest of the trilogy because they're going to do a new trilogy. So in Quentin Tarantino's Scream, you have Jenny Ortega as the main girl. You're trying to figure out who Ghostface is, but Ghostface is a Casper mask. And the twist at the end, drum roll, is the original idea for Kevin Williamson's new trilogy. So originally in Scream 4, Sidney Prescott's supposed to die, which makes me so mad. I'm so glad that it didn't work. Well, it doesn't really matter to me because here's the thing: the original Scream trilogy works as a trilogy. You never need to go past Scream 3. It ends perfectly. It's the perfect arc. The story is not about Ghostface. The story is not about murders. The story is about a final girl who makes it to the end of every movie, who evolves with every movie, and who finally can let go. She can let the door remain open as she goes to watch a movie, possibly a scary movie, with her friends. And that's how Scream 3 ends. And so no matter how much you hate on Scream 3 or Scream 2, the fact that the character has that arc and gets to that end makes perfect sense. And the other thing about Scream, the other thing about Sidney Prescott, in the second one, she's in a play. And I love this. It's one of my favorite scenes in the entire Scream trilogy. She's in a play called Cassandra. And it's like based on this classic Greek tragedy of Cassandra, who was cursed. She had a curse. And the curse was she would always be able to foretell the truth. She could foresee the future. But when she told people, no one would believe her. And so what would happen, and so how that it parallels, and she stars as Cassandra in the movie, and David Warner, the excellent David Warner, has a wonderful scene with Nev Campbell as the drama teacher, convincing Sydney that she is a warrior, that she is a fighter, that she has to keep moving on and pressing on and whatnot. And he tells her, you know, he asks her to repeat these words back because she wants to drop out of the play because Ghostface is slicing and dicing again. And ultimately it parallels to the tragedy of Cassandra in that anybody who surrounds Sydney dies, right? Anybody who surrounds Sydney dies. Her ultimate curse is that she will tell, if you get too close to me, you're going to get hurt. And she says that to Derek, her boyfriend. She says, Derek, you got to stay away from me because anybody who gets close to me gets hurt. And of course, Derek doesn't listen and Derek dies as a result, her one chance of happiness. And that's the other part of Sydney's character, is that in order for Sydney to live, everybody else has to die. So she goes through life with everybody around her dying. And by the time we get to Scream 3, she's locked herself up from the world. She's living under an assumed name and carries a gun as she should, and yada, yada, yada. And it's perfect. So the fact that Scream 4 didn't work out for Kevin Williamson or didn't work out for Wes Craven or whoever, or the Weinstein Company or Dimension or whoever was putting that together, I'm happy about that, because here's what originally was supposed to happen. They pulled Sydney back into action, which just pisses me off to begin with. She had her happily ever after in Scream 3. Leave her alone. Leave Sydney Prescott alone. Get someone else. Do something new. Involve Dewey. Let Sydney rest, right? They bring Sydney back. It turns out Jill, her cousin, is the killer. So stupid. I mean, it kind of works. It kind of works. Jill's motives kind of work. Jill successfully kills Sydney Prescott and becomes the new final girl, except she's also the killer. And then that trilogy was supposed to be Dewey on suspecting that Jill was the person who killed Sydney, and Dewey becomes the center. It was a very interesting idea that would not have worked for that. I don't know. I'm glad it didn't work out. However, the interesting is too awesome to leave off the table. And so in my ideal Scream remake with Quentin Tarantino, he takes that idea for a 21st century slasher and redoes where Sydney Prescott is also the killer. Sydney is the final girl in the Giallo whodunit setting, just like the original Scream. The only reveal at the end is that Sydney was the one who was orchestrating it the whole time for the exact motives that Jill was. And she is just wants to be famous and in this world of social media and blah, 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 blah. And she's the one that has it turns out that the boyfriend, it's in a complete reversal. The boyfriend who was framed for Billy Loomis was framed. And the whole time Sydney doesn't trust him, and Sydney's just doing a whole thing. So it's a combination of both. And I love what they did. I would never want to tread on the work that they did with Billy Loomis, because Billy Loomis is one of the most twisted slashers in all of history, in my opinion. The stuff that he does, the bad vibes and juju that he projects onto his girlfriend based on what her mother did, is so twisted. When you think about all the stuff that happens to Sydney in Scream, it's insane. But for the sake of doing something different, and trying to do something that has not been done before, because all that stuff has already been done. So for the sake of doing something that has not been done before, Sydney is the killer. And we find that out at the very end of the first Scream in this remake, that she's the one that kills. And she gets away with it, because Quentin Tarantino would totally have her get away with it. And she would go on to, and so would John Waters. If John Waters was doing it, Sydney Prescott would get away with it. So that would be my take. Samurai sword. And again, you could go into all sorts of stuff with like how, the samurai, there'd just be so much reference to everything. There'd be a reference to every slasher film you could imagine in Quentin Tarantino's version of that. And then who would you get to play the kids? I don't know, but who would you get to play to the adults? That's more interesting. So John Travolta would play the principal, would be Henry Winkler, would be played by John Travolta. Uma Thurman. Who would Uma Thurman be? I don't know. Damn. Who would be the opening kill too? The Drew Barrymore. Drew Barrymore would probably be in. He'd bring back Drew Barrymore, right? Drew Barrymore. Maybe she would play the. I don't know. That's all right. That's as far as I could get with the Scream. Here's the thing. Some of this stuff is on the fly. I'm thinking this as I'm doing it. So I don't want to leave you with any dead air. So we're gonna move on. So my next film is actually what started this whole conversation in the first place. It's a film called Suddenly, starring Frank Sinatra from 1956. Sinatra as a savage, sensation-hungry killer. This is an example of a film. And what's wrong with it? Going back to what I originally said, remake films that are not bad, but not perfect. Don't remake perfect films. Perfect films are perfect films. They don't need to be remade. Remake a film that is flawed with a really good idea. This is a film that's flawed. What makes it flawed? It's old. And there's nothing wrong with older films, but it's a film that should be updated. That's what should spurn the remake, because everything that's happening in 1956 in this film is kind of what would be very interesting with everything that's happening today. And it's basically Frank Sinatra plays a hitman who takes there's a woman, a grandfather who's a veteran of World War I, and a grandson. And Sinatra plays a gangster who's been paid mysteriously to kill the president. Him and his goons. They take the house hostage. So it's a home invasion thriller. And the reason why they invade this home in particular is that from this vantage point, as you can see here, this is a scene still from the film. As you can see here, the window view from this house on a hill has the perfect trajectory to the train station where the president happens to be making a secret impromptu stop off in the town of Suddenly. And it's the perfect, they have a window of 5 minutes to assassinate the president. And it's just great. It's one location. It could work as a play. Imagine everything that's great about Reservoir Dogs, but done with this plot instead. And it just works. And there's a Mexican standoff at the end, which is, everybody's got guns pointed at each other. See, that's the view of the station right there. And he's got a clear shot. Would that work in 2020, directed by Quentin Tarantino? I'm not sure, but I feel like it would make for such an interesting film. Even if they just updated it, let's say that it took place in the 80s or the 70s instead of the 50s. It just needs a modern director needs to be helming this film. See, they put the table in front of the window and then they bolt the gun down, and it's just Frank Sinatra just chewing the scenery, just going on and on about how he needs to kill the president. And who would you get to play everybody? So once again, I think we would have Samuel L. Jackson. All right, so let's invert the family. It would not be a white family, it would be a black family. Samuel L. Jackson would play the grandfather. Samuel Jackson's pushing 80 now, so it's like he played the grandfather. And he would just have, oh god, they would give such great dialogue to Samuel L. Jackson. And then who would you get for the Frank Sinatra role? I don't know. Again, see, this is the problem. All these answers are gonna come to me after all the cast. The casting requires someone else. I should have had someone else to bounce some of these ideas off of for casting, to figure out who the perfect foil would be for against Samuel L. Jackson. The kid could be anybody. And then you have the sheriff, you have the cop guy. Maybe the cop would be played by, this is gonna kill me. Okay, so right off the bat, you'd have Leonardo DiCaprio would play Frank Sinatra's role, because Leo would just make a meal out of this character, this guy who is got all sorts of backstory, and he gets so personal with these people who he's taken hostage. It's borderline. It's almost complete. It's so over the top, but I could totally see Leonardo DiCaprio in that role. And then there's the mother. I don't know who the mother would play. See, there's the three gangsters coming to the door, and you could get some really interesting bit players for these two parts. Maybe you'd have Steve Buscemi. Steve Buscemi would play the cop. Okay, so you have Steve Buscemi as the cop. There you go. Steve Buscemi plays the cop against Leonardo DiCaprio. Steve Buscemi would be a little bit older for that role, but because the guy's a little younger, he's supposed to be the love interest of the mom. But I'm going to let it ride with Steve Buscemi. So that's Suddenly. So here, okay. So we have one more film, and the last film I would want to see Quentin Tarantino remake something completely out of his wheelhouse, something so unfamiliar to Quentin Tarantino, a friggin' romantic comedy by Kevin Smith, Chasing Mother Effin' Amy. Hell yeah. Let's see Quentin Tarantino go in and do this film. And again, I just feel like Quentin Tarantino would invert everything. It wouldn't be an all-white cast. It would be an all-black cast directed by Quentin Tarantino. I would imagine him doing that love triangle. It would take place, definitely would take place. Actually, I'm going to throw a monkey wrench in this. I'm going to give Quentin Tarantino's Chasing Amy to Spike Lee. I can't believe I'm doing this because I'm saying all the stuff that Spike Lee would do. This is not, Quentin Tarantino would probably do it too, but Spike Lee would do it better. A Spike Lee joint, Chasing Amy, a Spike Lee joint where Spike Lee brings this love triangle into the projects of Brooklyn, somewhere in Brooklyn, projects of the Bronx. I don't know, somewhere inner city, urban, all black cast. Just going through the motions of the beats of Chasing Amy. So wow, I just actually took one away. And then all of a sudden the gay and lesbian politics take a real right turn in those communities. It's a completely different sort of chemistry with those sorts of social politics that frankly it's not my place to discuss them. And if I had a POC, person of color, if I had someone who was black here who was better suited to talk about those things, I would talk about them. But I think it's not my place to discuss them. In the same way that it's kind of screwed up that, you know, Quentin Tarantino writes a scene in Pulp Fiction with Samuel L. Jackson, with him saying the N-word a whole bunch of times in really, really kind of tasteless ways that have not aged well. So I'm not going to talk about that. But I would like to see Spike Lee do it. Spike Lee's Chasing Amy. Who would play everybody? I mean, you get Denzel Washington's son, who's worked with Spike and a few other people, I think, would play the lead. And then maybe Kerry Washington as Amy. That would be pretty cool. Who would play Jay and Silent Bob? Jay and Silent Bob would actually stay white, I feel like. They would stay white. They would, as a matter of fact, I would have Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes stay the same. I would not change them. They would stay the same in Spike Lee's Chasing Amy. Be the two, you know, white boy drug dealers. That would be very interesting. I don't know. But yeah, I just feel like this is a great story. I'd love to see the inverse. Let's see the inverse of this story done from the black experience, you know. It would be different. It would be interesting. And yeah, I guess you would get a lot of I don't know. This would definitely change around a little bit, maybe, I would think. I don't know. So that is so those are my four films. Four films by Quentin Tarantino, one film by Spike Lee. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. Who would you cast? So to end this, first of all, please subscribe if you've not subscribed already. But who would you cast in some of these roles that I mentioned? Leave your answers in the comments. Please subscribe to this channel. There's a bunch of ways you can support this channel. Leave a comment, like the video, subscribe, blah 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 blah, all that stuff and more. I'll definitely do another Jeff show separate, but we'll change it up. We're changing it up now. We're doing a bunch of different stuff, and I'll leave you with that.